unofficial saying is that I'm the guy between you and lunch. I think now I'm really the guy in your lunch. So let's see what we can do here. I think being one of the Swedes in Silicon Valley, I mean, one of the challenges we have as Swedes is really that we're being too modest all the time. I don't know, maybe you know that. So I'm going to do the Swedish intro to Ericsson now. I think we are in a fairly interesting position in the industry, being Ericsson, with all of these things happening, you know, that we see at this conference and in many other places. So I will speak a lot about that. We truly believe that what took Ericsson to this position is really not the same that will take us forward. Ericsson, of course, invented a lot of the mobile broadband that you see around. All of this wireless mobile broadband explosion that you see. Of course we built that. Of course we innovated that. But the same thing will not really take us forward coming from now. We fully realize that. And the disruptions we see, we really try to be in front of that. We try to really co-lead these disruptions. And WebRTC is one example. And I will show you a little bit what Ericsson has done in the WebRTC space. There are other spaces in parallel, I would say. If you know about the software-defined networking area, the SDN area that is super hyped right now, I think we should also say that Ericsson is really also there trying to ride on the disruption and trying to make sense of the SDN and so on. I think we see that parallel, you know, WebRTC, SDN, a lot of these software, you know, oriented things are really disrupting now, and we are there. And we think it's super interesting and exciting. Ericsson Research is a magnificent place. I mean, we have a fairly large facility now in San Jose here. Our market center is in Dallas. I mean, and the technology headquarters now is Stockholm and also Silicon Valley. So we are super happy about that. So I'm Martin Körling. I usually use CoreMart on Twitter and GitHub and other places. I will start off with a little bit the vision that we see, the explosion of communication, use cases, and services that we see happening. And then I will roll back a bit into technology and so on. So this is a multi-dimensional space. We will see, of course, any device. We talked about phones. Tablets is, of course, super hot now. But what about TVs, you know? I don't hear so much talk about TV sets now today. Maybe next year we will have Samsung here. So this is a widget that runs on a Samsung smart TV. That has a browser, of course, you know. So we will have WebRTC in the TV. And that opens up, of course, for a multi-device kind of situation. So this was a project that we are running with a widget that is actually running in the Samsung smart TV browser. So any device. Then we come to any media. We talk a lot about voice. Let's see if I can get this working now. Where do I have my pointer? Yeah, it's not about voice. It's not only about voice. I mean, it's about video. This is another kind of interesting demo that we have developed. So, of course, you can do video conferencing, but when you have that video media stream, there are loads of things you can do, of course, with the video media. If you upload it to a media server, you can make image recognition. I mean, this is just a case where we show that, okay, two friends, one being at Starbucks, you know, talk about buying espresso, can you buy me a latte too, and all that stuff. Why don't you do image recognition? We used QR codes now, just as an example, but you can really do recognition inside that media flow. What if you record that media flow and you do big data analysis on all of that? Somebody said yesterday, of course, that I mean the voice audio that I'm hearing and talking all my life can be stored in a pretty decent small amount of memory. I mean that will become just huge with these technologies. This really spans across consumer and enterprise as well. Obviously, you know, if you span up the whole space of different use cases. This is a particularly interesting, I mean, when you do this video stuff in the browser, you can leverage a lot of the other kind of components. This becomes an integration play, where speed of integration is really the key. So you can sort of ride on manipulating the media and so on. So these are some of the examples that we have been doing to just play around with different sort of what you can do with video collaboration in the browser. This is a little bit about person to person, but of course the business processes is huge as well. There is an enormous amount of use cases that you can think about when it comes to business processes. So e-health, of course. So we did this demo. This is a tablet with a sort of a patient-doctor kind of app. But you can add video in there. Super, super simple, of course. And so that's, we have worked on that as well. Then we are working in the retail space. We are talking to some very large retail players here in the US about voice enabling their enterprise processes, you know, or media enabling their. This is kind of a inventory kind of application for food handling. I will come back to that a little bit later, and so on. So, okay. Huge innovations going on, huge set of new use cases. The fundamental understanding, I think, here is that we have to build a platform. Ericsson and the carriers have to build a platform that opens up for other players to do all of those innovations. We are not going to do all of those innovations. No way at all. Of course, we understand that. So the focus we have right now is to really make the communication a platform that is opened up so that we can have all of this innovation going on. So, and then the question becomes, once you realize that, the question really becomes more of integration. What are the integration patterns that we want to do? What are the APIs? What are the macros? What are the components that we will show from the network up to the innovators of the world? And so I will come back to that a little bit. Developer experience becomes extreme. So we are extremely passionate now about developer experience. And we're trying to work together with the carriers, you know, we are not the experts of that. You know that, most of you know right now. So we are super aware of that. But it is the name of the game going forward. This innovation will take place. We're going to have to build a platform that is open, that is componentified, so that we can, you know, leverage all of that good stuff in the network. What is that good stuff in the network? I will try to come back to that as well. I'm going to need to stop all of these videos first. Let me see here. I just wanted to do a little bit of a timelining of WebRTC. I haven't seen anybody else really doing that in the other speeches. I mean, so many interesting reflections that you can make. This has gone really fast, you know. Just like 2-3 years ago, there was not the WebRTC, you know. But this also really tries to speak about Ericsson truly believing in this disruption at an early stage. So WebRTC is nothing that Ericsson says, oh yeah, now we have to hook onto the WebRTC. We were there very, very early. December 2009, there was this device element discussion going on in the different working groups, and it didn't really maybe feel like the way forward. I mean, we did the first blog post on Ericsson Labs. This has been a very good method for Ericsson to get in touch with the ecosystem, with the browser vendors and so on, to be early out there. There were early drafts of the peer-to-peer, and then we involved ourselves really in the standardization and in the WebKit, and in the WebKit sort of source code, some of the components there very early on. So mid 2010, we really launched sort of a prototypical WebKit release with some basic WebRTC functionality in it, just to play around with, just to try to push a little bit the technology. And then the real standardization really started off, I think, early 2011 with the ITF working group, which Ericsson was co-chairing, the W3C, of course, then with this sort of API piece, and you heard about that in all of the super good technical panels here yesterday and so on. The What VG group has been there all the time as a sort of the guerrilla force trying to push some of this ahead. Then we really saw the first release of Google sort of developer channel browsers and so on. We did more releases from Ericsson Labs to try to just to be in the loop, so to speak. I mean, this is a purpose. That maybe is good to say right off. Ericsson will not be a browser vendor. So the stuff that you see here, we are showing mobile browsers and stuff. We are doing that to be in the disruption. We want to be right there. We saw Opera here. Opera has been a super good speaking partner. And at the end here, now we are in the end of 2012. We are super happy to see Google and Firefox really releasing these truly more stable versions. Of course, they are not converged completely, you know. It's a new name of standardization has really a new significance now. We cannot think about standardization the way we did with the old telecom systems. That's definitely for sure. What we are doing now is to try to push the mobile browser. We really want to see that coming. So what we have done is to, again, experimental, and you can see it in our booth. On iOS and on Android, on those app stores, there is sort of an Ericsson browser which can run WebRTC just for people to play around with. We call this Bowser. I don't really know why. You have to ask Vlad, who is our super expert in the booth. And we can run video there. We can run, you know, so that you can get the feel of it, together with the desktop browsers, obviously. Yeah, so that's a little bit what we have done. But this is, I would say, WebRTC is one component. When you remember the platform we want to open up, WebRTC is one component. There are many other components here that we have to open up to make this innovation happen on top of the networks. So I want to talk about a little bit the value of the network. What is it that the communication network can provide in this ecosystem? And I think this is a quote I stole a bit from Jeff, our panelist that you have seen in the other rooms today. The best thing with WebRTC that doesn't have any addressing or session setup, right? It democratizes communication. You can really do anything. Okay, but then the worst thing with WebRTC, it doesn't have any addressing and session setup, you know. So this is really, I think, one of the starting points for us. There is an addressing space out there already. It's trusted. People can build towards it, and it's called phone numbers. And it's not the sexiest thing in the world, but it's a kind of a crucial starting point. And a lot of those phone numbers are, of course, hidden behind PBXs, but then there are a super huge number of phone numbers that are not hidden behind the PBXs. It's really in the communication network as we see it. So that's one fundamental piece that when all of these innovations will happen, with the e-health and the collaboration and the Starbucks and all of that, I don't think that people will want to rebuild that whole session setup all the time, you know. That's just plumbing. And WebRTC doesn't solve. So WebRTC is one set of plumbing. But I think what we want to do, what I want to show you, is that the session setup and the addressing, that's another piece of plumbing that we can provide to you, basically. So one thing is just to show a picture like this. You know, of course, it's not about the phone numbers, really. It's about the contacts list. It's just about the fact that your phone number is already in all of your friends and colleagues and contacts and family sort of contacts lists. And you want to be reached with that phone number across all devices. And we want to have developers really using that. It's not sort of a hidden function. It's really an open function. This should be an open function for developers. And WebRTC is really enabling that with no plugins, of course, across devices. That is the story, so to speak. And I will show you some code in a while, how we think that the developer experience should be to use that session setup and addressing sort of platform. So that's basically Ericsson's role, I think, in a nutshell. We are helping the operators to build in this way, and we let this requirement structure influence what we are doing on the network. It's not about just building a gateway. It's not about IMS. We can talk about IMS or SIP for days, you know. It's not really about that. We will solve that, so to speak, in some way. But it's really about, you know, enabling reach here, reach there, and so on. That's what is put in the requirements on the whole thing. So let's get a little bit more into detail. So I wanted to, you know, about the fiscal cliff now that's so much talked about. I want to put myself to the demo cliff here in a little while to actually write some code live here. So I think it's exciting. We want to make it simple to get this addressing and session setup done. And we want to meet the developers where they are right now. And that is not in the standardization bodies and so on. I think that's also a thing we rethink completely now. These components that we offer, they have to be exposed in the developer communities that are already out there. So for example, what about the JavaScript library that can use simple REST interfaces to hook into this infrastructure? Yes, you can do zip in JavaScript, of course, and there are many, and we will do it too. Ericsson will do zip in the JavaScript. But maybe we should simplify it a bit. Maybe we should reach that simplest level where we say we can have a REST interface to the network, we can do simple JavaScript in the browser, not only for the media, that's WebRTC, but also for the session setup and the addressing on top. So that's what I'm going to try to show you, is that we will hide WebRTC and all of that stuff and have a simple JavaScript API that will just set up a session and just make it work, basically. So I wanted to say, like, you have your app, and you want to pour some addressing there. You want to pull some global addressing there. That should be super simple. That should be 4 lines of code. And so one of the communities we are really excited about, and some guys that we are working with now, is the Phono community and the Voxio Labs. So you heard a lot from Voxio Labs in these different panel sessions and so on. And that's one way for us to really reach developers where they are. Voxio Labs is typically one company that really knows about this. They have attracted developers. I don't think that operators really have done that yet. So let's take the network to where they are already. So let's marry the Phono API with this network stuff, basically. So that's exactly what we have done. We have taken the Phono JavaScript API. So if you have already developed an app that works towards the Phono, you just change out basically a little bit the pointers to where you point that thing, and it will work with the operator's network instead. That's the philosophy here. And the WebRTC is sort of hidden here somewhere down below. You sort of never see it on that web app level. Okay, live on-stage code exercise. And you all know what I'm getting myself into now. So, yeah, I just have a drink. Okay, so I have my little PHP project here. I use Cloud9, mostly because I like Node.js, but I really didn't know how to do this in Node.js, so Vlad did it in PHP instead, and showed me a little bit how to do this. This is the Phono document. If you go into Phono, Voxio Lab stuff, this is basically the hello world of a Phono app, You have the typical jQuery. jQuery is a big, big part of this. We feel that, okay, if you want to do something with JavaScript, maybe the starting point is to do it jQuery style. So this is a jQuery style. And here is what you do when you write a Phono app. You basically import the JavaScript library. And then you see basically here that you sort of create a Phono. Here is where you create the sort of Phono object, jQuery style. So if you're used to that, and there are many, many developers who are used to this style of writing a web app, we want to make sure that it's super close to that. So here you see it's a little bit different, but here you basically see the Phono object. And what we want to do is, here is where you import your jQuery libraries up there. So what I want to do now is I just want to add one more JavaScript library here. Let's just see here. So here's where I just point to that gateway function that we have towards IMS, really. So it's called H2S Phono, and it's version 2. So we hope that that is correct. Now I will cheat a bit. So there are many more lines of, when it comes to these 4 lines of code here, I will actually just cut and paste them because I don't want to bore you with writing all of these IP addresses. I will explain what it does. So normally here, so that would import the first line that I did there was importing the JavaScript library. Now you really want to point to that gateway to the IMS network, or then sort of the telco, the carrier network. So that's the IP address thing here. What you normally would do is to have an OAuth sequence, of course, that would authenticate the user and you as a service provider, so to speak, that dance. But we don't do that now. But we wrote a comment line there just to indicate that. What we do is just we will authenticate just directly towards the network here. So, so now is the time to cross the fingers and spit in various directions and see if we can make this work here. Now the fun begins. I think what I usually do is to restart Cloud9, actually. I don't know about you. But here you go. I see that my edits are still there, which is pretty nice. And I do run. And here you go. So this is the URL to my PHP script running somewhere. I could basically do like this. There will be a new tab opening up. And there will then hopefully be a web app coming down here. Yeah. It should be exciting. Doing live demos. Let's see. Yeah, okay. Something took a lot of time. I don't know why. So, here we are. Maybe I need to stress again. I'm not saying that WebRTC's purpose in life is to be a front end to PSTN. That's not what I'm trying to show. I know that this is the hello world. I mean, everybody's showing, and it's sort of not really within the frame of the screen here, so I will try to make it smaller. We fundamentally, of course, don't believe that this is just an example of how to open up the network, and then what you build on top of it. But this is a way to show that you can reach phone numbers for any app using sort of 4 lines of JavaScript. So I will take out my phone now. I will do a little bit the other thing now. We've seen many times people calling from the browser to a phone. I will be really innovative here. I will actually call the browser from the phone. So that's when I log into this app, I'm associating the browser with a phone number now. That's really crucial, right? And that's a fundamental enabler, actually, that now suddenly I can call my browser here. So that's the number. This is just the usual phone. I promise I'm not cheating. I'm calling, and I'm crossing my fingers again. Oh, it is calling. Okay, good. So I can answer that phone call. And let's see if I can get some nasty feedback loop going here. Hello? Yeah, it's saying hello. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's working. And then Vlad told me that I should always terminate the call from the phone, not from the browser. I don't know exactly why so. That's it. I did a code example. Yeah, that's the demo cliff that you want to sort of put yourself at and jump, basically. Okay, coming back and to finish off. So we fundamentally believe there's going to be an explosion of innovation. We are not going to build that. We're going to try to open up the platforms together with the carriers. Ericsson is actually sometimes going all the way, and we are organizing hackathons to try to be in touch with the creativity all the way out there to test this technology off. So we recently did with our market region center in Dallas, we did a hackathon, which was a sort of together with North Texas Food Bank. So it was really for the good of the world, for the good of society. Put technology into use to try to find ways to distribute food, for needing people. So this is that was a super good experience. We got a lot of people there playing around with APIs, doing apps. And it's really, again, we collect requirements from this stuff. This is what we use to try to see what we should build into the infrastructure going forward. And I'm coming back to that, the winning contribution here really was about this thing that I showed, sort of to media enable basically an ERP process. I mean, the process of, and here you can see the winning team getting an Ericsson check. I don't know how much money it was. But anyway, that was a super good exercise in more towards the retail and the enterprise resource planning kind of use case, where you can see that you could voice enable certain processes in logistics and so on. So that was a super good thing there. Okay, that's basically it. I've tried to tell you a little bit about what Ericsson thinks about disruptions in the industry and what we do kind of early on to try to get involved. What we hope for is really the mobile browsers to come along there. It is not as simple as the desktop browsers. And we are doing our own little things with the browser to try to spur that development. We try to think about what are the essential pieces of the network: phone numbers, identity, trust, things that we can provide by open APIs, such as a sort of a Phono-inspired JavaScript API for session setup and addressing that I just showed, basically. That's it. Thank you.